Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we bring you a heartfelt and empowering tale of personal growth, family dynamics, and the importance of standing up for yourself. Meet Caitlin, a 23-year-old college student who has spent years sacrificing her own dreams to babysit her sister's children. After countless sacrifices, Caitlin finally reaches her breaking point and decides to take control of her life, leading her on an unforgettable journey of self-discovery. Get ready for a story about finding freedom, overcoming guilt, and choosing to live for yourself. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories and join us as we begin this incredible journey today. Hi, I'm Caitlin. I'm 23 years old and finishing up my last year of college. You would think that life at this point would be straightforward: study, pass my exams, and finally graduate, right? But for me, things have never been that simple. My life has always felt like a never-ending cycle. And the reason behind it has been my older sister Megan, and her twin toddlers, Jackson and Lily. Megan is 30, married to Tom, and has her own house across town. You'd assume that, being a grown woman with a family of her own, she would be fully responsible for her children, especially since she's the one who chose to have them. But in my family, things don't exactly work that way. Ever since Jackson and Lily were born 5 years ago, I've somehow found myself as their go-to babysitter, whether I liked it or not. It all started when I was just a freshman in college. One evening, Megan showed up at our house unannounced, carrying 2 tiny babies in her arms and a diaper bag that seemed to weigh more than she did. She had a look of urgency on her face as she walked in. "Caitlin, I have this really important meeting. Can you watch them just for an hour?" she asked, her voice a bit frantic. I didn't think much of it at the time. The twins were only a few months old, and they looked so small and fragile. I figured it wouldn't be that hard, so I agreed without giving it a second thought. Little did I know that 1 hour would turn into 3, then 4, and before I knew it, the sun had set. I was exhausted, changing diapers, feeding the babies, and trying to calm them down as they cried. When Megan finally returned, I was sitting on the couch, completely drained. She didn't have any work documents with her or looked like she had just come from a stressful meeting. Instead, she had several shopping bags in her hands, a guilty smile on her face, and a cheerful tone. "Thanks so much, Caitlin. You're such a natural with them," she said. "I should have known you'd be perfect for this." Perfect? I hadn't signed up for this. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I just nodded and tried to hide my frustration. I should have known then that this was just the beginning. From that day forward, Megan started dropping off Jackson and Lily every time she needed to run errands, go to doctor's appointments, or, let's be honest, just have some time to herself. At first, it was just a couple of hours here and there, but it quickly turned into entire weekends. I tried to set boundaries. I really did. I told her, "Megan, I have midterms coming up. I really need to study." But she'd just roll her eyes and brush past me. "Don't be so dramatic," she'd say, already setting up their toys and blankets in the living room. "They mostly just sleep anyway. You can study while they nap." Anyone who has ever been around babies knows that's never how it works. Between endless diaper changes, feeding schedules, and their constant need for attention, finding time to study was impossible. I was falling behind in my classes, running on barely any sleep, and missing out on time with my friends. I couldn't keep up. I remember one weekend, after Megan had dropped off the twins for the 3rd time in a row, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Megan, I haven't seen my friends in weeks," I complained, my voice full of frustration. She just shrugged. "You'll be fine. They love spending time with you." Sure, they loved spending time with me. But at what cost? I began to realize that my college experience wasn't like that of my classmates. While they were going to parties, making memories, and enjoying their youth, I was stuck at home, looking after my nieces and nephews. I learned how to write essays with one hand while rocking a crying baby with the other. I missed out on everything that was supposed to be part of those formative years. As the years passed, the twins grew from tiny, helpless newborns into energetic toddlers. But Megan's expectations of me never changed. In fact, they only grew. "They're so much easier to handle now," she'd say with a bright smile. "They can walk and talk. It's basically like having little friends over." But 5-year-olds still need constant supervision. They get into everything: climbing bookshelves, drawing on walls with markers, getting into cupboards. Watching them was never as easy as Megan made it sound. By the time I reached my final year of college, I was beyond exhausted. My graduation day was just around the corner. But all I could think about was how much I had sacrificed just to keep my family happy. Would Megan ever stop relying on me? Or would I still be babysitting these kids when I was 30? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing. I needed some time for myself. "Megan, I need some time for myself too," I told her, hoping she would understand. She just rolled her eyes. "What do you mean? You have plenty of free time. The babies don't take up that much of it." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "Besides, isn't this what sisters are for? We need to help each other." That became her go-to line every time I tried to say no. Sisters should help each other. To Megan, nothing was more important than family. And because of that, I kept losing myself. Every time I tried to make a life for myself, to have my own space, her demands pushed me back into the same old cycle. In those moments, I felt like a shadow of myself. I had dreams, ambitions, and desires, but they seemed so far away. I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever break free from this unspoken duty to my family. Or if it was a role I would have to play for the rest of my life. What would happen to me? Could I ever become more than just the person who always said yes? Graduation was finally here, and I couldn't believe it. After 4 years of juggling classes, late-night study sessions, and years of babysitting Jackson and Lily, I was finally going to get a break. I had already made plans with my friends to celebrate and go on a trip. My grandmother had gifted me $10 for graduation, and I had decided to use it for something I had dreamed about for years: a trip to California with my friends. It was going to be my escape, my chance to have something for myself after everything I had sacrificed. California had always been on my list of places to visit, and this trip was my reward for surviving college and all the responsibilities Megan had placed on me. My friends and I spent hours planning everything: flights, hotels, sightseeing. It felt like a fresh start. Like I could finally step into the world and experience the freedom I had longed for. One afternoon, while I was sitting with my friends at our favorite cafe, we finalized all the details. We were set to leave the second week of July. I felt like the weight of the world had lifted off my shoulders. It was just a few weeks away, and I could already picture myself standing on the California coast, breathing in the salty air and feeling the sand between my toes. It was my dream, and it was finally happening. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. When I got home that evening, I found that Megan and her family had been invited over for dinner. I was bubbling with excitement, eager to tell her and everyone else about my plans. "We're going to California," I said, grinning from ear to ear. Megan's fork dropped onto her plate with a loud clank. Her eyes widened, and I saw the change in her face immediately. She froze for a moment before her voice became sharp. "When exactly are you planning to go?" she asked, her tone cold. "The second week of July," I said, still grinning. "We got amazing deals on the tickets." Her face turned red, and she slammed her fist onto the table. "The second week of July? Are you kidding me? You knew Jack and I were planning our trip then." I was taken aback. "I didn't know about your trip, Megan. We just planned this today." She narrowed her eyes, her voice dripping with frustration. "You absolutely planned this just so you wouldn't have to watch the twins." She was fuming, her usual calm demeanor completely gone. I blinked, confused. "Megan, I didn't know. This is something I've been planning for a while. And we just booked everything. I can't cancel this." Her anger flared. "You need to cancel it," she insisted. "You can go to California anytime. But Jack and I have already booked everything. We need you to watch the kids." I felt a rush of frustration flood through me. This was my moment. My chance to finally experience something for myself. I can't cancel. We've already paid for everything. And this is my only chance to travel with my friends before everyone moves away. Megan just rolled her eyes. Don't be ridiculous. Your friends will still be here. My trip is more important. I haven't had a vacation in years. You need to stay and babysit. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. No, Megan, I'm not changing my plans. Everything is already booked, and I'm going. This is ridiculous. Megan's face twisted into a scowl. You're being completely selfish, she shouted. I stared at her, my heart pounding in my chest. Selfish? I had spent years dropping everything for her, sacrificing my own happiness, my education, and my social life. She didn't see it that way. She saw my refusal as betrayal, as though I was doing something wrong by choosing my own happiness for once. I'm not being selfish, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I've spent the last 4 years dropping everything to babysit. I've missed out on everything, parties, study groups, even simple hangouts with my friends. This is my chance to have something for myself. I'm not going to back down. Megan's eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. What about the twins? Have you thought about what I'm supposed to do with them? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. I didn't back down. You know what? Hire a babysitter. I'm not your free childcare anymore. Megan let out a bitter laugh. A babysitter? I don't trust strangers with my kids. Besides, Jack and I are saving up to buy a house. We can't afford a babysitter when you're perfectly capable of watching them. I was done. If you can afford a vacation, you can afford a babysitter. I shot back. She raised an eyebrow, acting as if she didn't understand. This trip is important for our marriage, she said, her voice softening to her usual manipulative tone. We just need some time together. I was trembling with rage now. You're not going to guilt me into this. This isn't about guilt, Megan. This is about family responsibility. But you don't get to take advantage of me anymore. I'm going to California, and that's final. Her expression turned into one of shock. For a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. But it disappeared quickly, replaced by a scowl. She wasn't going to back down either. The next 2 weeks felt strangely quiet. The chaos I had grown accustomed to. Megan's sudden drop-offs of Jackson and Lily. Her phone calls asking for favors seemed to vanish. It was as if a storm was about to break. But for now, there was only eerie calm. My parents didn't intervene in the conflict between Megan and me. They just said we needed to sort things out ourselves. I did my best to ignore the tension, focusing instead on packing and getting ready for my long-awaited trip to California. But as the days went by, my anxiety grew. I had become so used to the constant pressure from my sister that it was hard to believe this moment of freedom could truly happen. I tried to push down the unease that lingered in my chest, reminding myself that I had earned this. I had worked hard, sacrificed so much, and now, finally, I was about to do something just for me. The night before my flight, I made a quick run to the store to pick up a few last-minute things for the trip. I was so distracted by the excitement that I didn't think twice about leaving the house. I was only gone for an hour at most, weaving through the aisles, picking up travel essentials. But when I returned, something felt off. The house was too quiet. There were no sounds of the twins running around. No chatter from Megan. I could hear faint giggles coming from the living room. Though, my heart skipped a beat. I knew exactly who those giggles belonged to. Jackson and Lily. But why were they here? Megan hadn't dropped them off. She knew I was about to leave. I rushed into the living room, my breath quickening as I saw them sitting cross-legged on the floor. In their tiny hands was something that made my stomach drop, my passport. The one thing I needed to leave for California, my ticket to freedom, was in the hands of my nephews, who were happily scribbling all over it with markers. No, 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 I shouted, lunging forward to grab it. My hands were shaking as I snatched it from them, my heart racing. Please be okay, please be okay, I whispered to myself. But it wasn't okay. It wasn't even close. I flipped open the passport, my stomach twisting. Where my photo should have been was a ragged hole. Uneven and torn, clearly cut with scissors. The pages were a mess. Covered in colorful scribbles, red, blue, green, and purple streaks all over every single page, including the visa stamps and the official ones. My dream of leaving the country had been destroyed in an instant. I screamed, not caring who heard. The anger, the frustration, the years of feeling trapped. It all exploded inside me. I had worked so hard for this trip. And now it was gone. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched the ruined passport to my chest. Look what they did, I choked out, my voice breaking as I looked up at my parents. They had rushed into the room when they heard my screams. But they were too late. Megan stood there, her arms crossed, her face expressionless. There was no shock, no apology, no guilt. She just sighed and shook her head. Caitlin, you really need to be more careful with your important things, she said in a condescending voice. I couldn't believe it. I stared at her, disbelief washing over me. How could she be so cold, so dismissive of what I had just lost? I had spent years putting my life on hold for her, and now she was acting as if it was my fault. I took a deep breath, trying to hold my composure. I never leave my things out, especially when the twins are here, I said, my voice firm, despite the tears still blurring my vision. You let them destroy my passport on purpose. Megan looked at me with that same innocent expression she always wore when she tried to manipulate me. Well, clearly you didn't learn your lesson well enough, she said with a shrug. I was done. If I'm so careless, I shot back, then why do you keep leaving your kids with me? Why trust someone you think is irresponsible? Megan didn't answer. Instead, she turned to my parents. Her voice smooth as she explained the situation. You know how careless Caitlin can be. She probably left her passport lying around somewhere. The twins just found it. And wanted to play. It's not a big deal. I couldn't listen anymore. I had spent years being manipulated. Being made to feel like my life didn't matter. But not this time. This time, I wasn't going to back down. I crossed my arms, my voice steady and full of conviction. If you need someone to watch the twins, hire a babysitter, I said, my words sharp and final. I'm done being your free childcare. Her eyes flickered with annoyance. But she said nothing. I looked at my parents, hoping they would stand up for me. But they stood silent. Dad, always calm and patient, was staring at Megan now, his face hardening. This is enough, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. You've controlled my life for too long. Megan, this is my trip, and I'm going. No more excuses. In the days that followed, things were never the same. My father, usually so reserved, made it clear that he would no longer tolerate Megan's manipulations. He was disappointed, but also angry. His patience, which had been stretched thin for years, had finally run out. Megan, as usual, tried to excuse her actions. But the damage was done. My parents had always supported her. But now, they finally saw the truth of how she had used me for so long. As for me, I went to California. It was everything I had dreamed of. The freedom, the laughter, the joy of finally being able to live for myself, and not constantly in the shadow of family demands, was a relief. My friends and I spent our days wandering the streets of Los Angeles, breathing in the fresh air, visiting landmarks I had only seen in pictures. Each moment was a reminder of what it felt like to take control of my own life. When I returned, I found a new sense of peace in my own apartment. No more unexpected visits from Megan. No more guilt trips. It was mine, a space where I could finally breathe without feeling like I was responsible for everyone else's happiness. My relationship with my parents, though strained, had improved. They had learned a valuable lesson about the importance of boundaries. And I had learned that it was okay to put myself first. Megan, of course, still tried to manipulate situations. But I was no longer her pawn. I had found my voice. And with it, a new life. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to subscribe to the Life Stories channel to stay updated on new videos. Thank you for following my journey.